Howdy everybody, welcome back to the channel. I want to give you all my after action report on class I just took, Green Ops Tactical Advanced Covert Carry class. Finished that about a week ago, so I've had time to kind of gather my thoughts, write some stuff down, and share with you guys. So what was crazy is I've never trained in such cold environments. The temperature I don't think got above 30 degrees. Both days were freezing rain and sleet and was pretty stinking miserable. But nonetheless, it was good to train in different environments. Working on the draw was a big one for me with all those clothes on. It's something we really never get the chance to do here down in South Texas. So let's go over the class. I want to share with you all kind of what it all entailed. So my three main takeaways, and we're about to talk about number one a little bit more in depth. But the first one is your dress. Dressing to carry a pistol. Dress in the manners to not bring attention to yourself. Keep that gun concealed. So we'll expound on that in just a little bit. Number two was trigger prep. So I got my blue gun. A lot of times when you press the trigger, and this also kind of comes into play with pre-ignition flinch, I still deal with it. But a lot of times when you think you've taken up all the slack, and I think this is a direct quote from Mike Green, when you think you've taken up all the slack, you still haven't taken up all the slack. So when you think you're at that wall and you're about to break that sear, you are still not there. A friend of mine, Hunter Freeland, who has kind of helped me out recently with some shooting, what he likes to talk about is getting that slack out of the way quickly, getting that 80% slack out of the way, and then you've got that 20% left to press through. So guys, just think when you have taken up all that slack, you still have not taken up all that slack. And then number three, thanks to Rowdy for this. Rowdy was I think he's a master class USPSA or IDPA shooter. I don't know the difference between the two, but nonetheless, the guy's a high level competitive shooter. Shooting offhand, shooting single hand, I don't practice that enough. I've been working quite a bit on my draw, building my grip, working with the red dot. One of the things that Rowdy brought was when you were shooting single hand, a lot of times people like to shoot with that gun canted, especially with the dot. He likes to tuck that elbow in and try to get that gun vertical. So tucking that elbow in actually helps track that dot a lot better, and helps that gun, helps you manage recoil, because you don't necessarily want to be limp wristing that gun. You want to give it enough, I call it ass behind the gun, to make sure that it cycles properly. So both my right hand and my left, instead of doing the natural cant, just tuck that elbow in and get that gun a little bit more vertical. So those were my three main takeaways. Let's get to the class, kind of what we covered. So about the first hour and a half, Mike actually did a discussion, did a talk on what the difference between covert carry, concealed carry, basically not being undetectable, and it's essentially the consequences of being discovered. So he brought out a bunch of different types of clothing. He talked about his experiences in the past working overseas, trying to adapt, trying to dress to the environment that you are in. So that has resonated significantly with me. And a shameless plug for my friend Alex. Guys, if y'all want to go look at a channel that really talks about the concealed carry lifestyle from I guess a more refined point of view, go check out The Suited Shootist. Alex does a really good job of showing how you can still carry, still be armed, but also dress very well. So me, I'm a blue jeans and a hoodie kind of guy, but nonetheless, that talk that Mike had on dressing to your environment, not bringing attention to yourselves, was very critical. So I'm actually going to make some changes. I'll share with y'all kind of what I'm going to be doing as we get there. So going out to the range, first thing we did was a safety brief, figuring out who all had safety training or medical training. Luckily we had at least, I know, one paramedic there, which was great. We started out doing the dot torture drill. The first day was essentially focused on draw and basically accuracy, trigger manipulation, trying to be as precise as we can. So we started out dot torture at 3 yards. I threw 3 shots. One of them was, I was just getting a little bit sloppy, pre-ignition flinch. The other 2, I missed a shot on my right and my left. That was before that correction that Rowdy made. So after that, I was able to do a lot better with my offhand. But anyway, one of the things I noticed when I was shooting single hand, I was shaking so bad. It was because it was so damn cold. So thank you, Mother Nature, for that. After dot torture, we went over the draw stroke. One of the emphasis from there is, regardless of where you're drawing from, and I 100% agree with this, get that gun out. You need to get that gun out on target as quickly as you can. If you're up close, then I need to do work as quickly as possible. Even if you go back to 25 yards, get that gun out as quickly as possible, so it gives you just that little bit more time to make sure your sights or your dot is set up properly to make that shot. So worked quite a bit on the draw stroke, trying to emphasize a sense of urgency, plugging it out of the holster, and then meeting our hands together and getting a good presentation. From there, we went to some NSR drills, working on transitioning up to the head. Then we went into some single-handed shooting. Like I said, Rowdy did a real good job of helping me tucking those elbows in. Made a significant difference with my single-handed shooting. Then we started covering malfunctions, your essential tap rack, and then also clearing double feeds, how to do things like that. So Mike talked about a bunch of different scenarios. He likes to use gravity to get his malfunctions out. Yeah, so good stuff on that. Then we went to single-handed malfunctions. So making sure you only have one hand. If it's right hand, seating that magazine and then racking that slide off something, a holster, belt, pants, whatnot. Same thing with the left, tap and a rack. If it's a double feed, you got to find a way to store that gun so that you can get a fresh magazine in there. One of the ways and things that he likes to use, and it was actually pretty quick, is instead of putting that gun back in the holster, sticking it in between your knees. So your knees pinch together, hold the gun with the magazine out that way. That way you can reach, slap a new mag, make sure it's seated, pull it up, rack it, and then go to work. So single-handed malfunctions. And then at the end of the day, we ran a modified IDPA USPSA stage drill that Rowdy had set up. The first time I ran it, I tried to game the crap out of it, trying to do some moving and shooting, and it was an utter failure. The second time I ran through did significantly better. So anyway, that was the end of day one. Let's talk day two, and the weather did not get any better. Went through, I don't know how many hand warmers, but we started off the day again at dot torture, backed it out to 5 yards. Shots were much better. This time I only pulled 2, and both of those were single-handed. So score got better as I backed away, so I consider that a win. Nonetheless, it was still cold. Then we started, essentially the second day is all about alternative shooting positions, but mainly movement. So alternative shooting positions, what am I talking about? So one of the things when you carry a gun, where you carry on your body affects the accessibility both for you and to somebody else. So I've got to be able to keep other people from getting access to my gun, but I've also have to be able to access it from a bunch of different positions. So we actually did some work on drawing the gun from seated. So we would draw, from the seated position, we would stand up, and as a process of standing up, we clear our cover garments, draw and fire some shots. We would also try to draw from the chair and shoot from there. So shooting from the seated position was really good. Mike also kind of from that same context talked about how to, we didn't do any live fire out of vehicles, but talked about how to situate your seat belt from getting out of a car, and some other stuff like that. So that was really neat. A couple shooting positions they actually kind of skipped over. I think that was prone and supine, mainly because I know day two, the weather was getting pretty bad. They wanted to get us out at a fairly reasonable time because we were about to get a storm in that evening. So they cut out prone and supine due to the weather and time constraints. Then we started to get into more movement stuff, turning from the left, turning from the right, turning from the rear. So your eyes go first, then your head, then your body moves, and then as soon as you've cleared any friendlies or anybody that you don't want to flag or point your gun at, you begin your draw stroke and getting that out. So movement, turning from the left to the right to the rear. Then we started moving, started doing some drills, moving front to back, side to side, serpentine drills. So it set up a couple barrels, engaging a target. As that target became available, you would engage it, moving through the barrels, working on, essentially working in a confined space. So after you were shooting, when you came through the barrels, it was, let's say you had a friend front and behind, so getting that gun up or down, making sure not to flag them. So as that target became available, you would engage, and then as you got behind your friends or cover, noticing where, or being aware of where your muzzle was. I'm a high index guy, but your mileage may vary. Just do whatever the scenario or whatever the situation dictates or calls for. That's another video for another day. Anyway, so next we went to moving and shooting. So there's a difference, and one of the things that I learned, there's the difference between moving and shooting and then moving, then shooting. I would agree with Mike on this. When it comes time to shoot, I want to be able to get the best stance, or I need to be in the best position available to make sure I get those shots. Shooting on the move, shooting while running is extremely difficult. So one of the things that we did, we worked on running to a certain point, slow down, see your sights, press a couple rounds off, and then getting back on your horse, going to a second position, slowing down, seeing your sights, engaging your target. So when it's time to move, move. When it's time to shoot, shoot. Try not to necessarily mix the two. Like I said, situations may vary, but ideally, I'm responsible for every round that comes out of that gun. I need to get a stable platform, or as stable of a platform as I can, to make those shots. So moving, then shooting, that's what I prefer. Like I said, serpentine drills. Next, we went to kind of some higher round count drills, some bill drills, which is a 7-yard drill, 6 rounds at 7 yards. Basically, we used that opportunity to kind of find where the wheels started to fall off. Yeah, so working on bill drills. Then we worked on target transitions. So we had 3 targets out in front of us, engaging each target twice. The concept is instead of doing double tap, so a bang, 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 actually seeing your sights twice, and then as soon as that second shot or that last shot on the target breaks, your eyes transition to the next target, you get those 2 sight pictures and presses, and then your eyes transition. So instead of it being like a, pop, 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 it was essentially what you want to try to get is 6 even courses of fires, an even cadence among all 3 targets. That is a much quicker way to do things. So worked on that. And then last, we ended the day doing the El Presidente drill. I believe that's 10 yards with your back to the targets. You have to turn, engage each target twice, conduct a reload, and then finish up with 2 more rounds. I was able to walk away with a high score from that. But yeah, so it was a great class. Highly recommended, especially if you guys have not done anything with movement, single-handed manipulations, things like that. So if all you have done is like a pistol 1 class where single-hand shooting, working from the draw, and you've got a good foundation, good fundamentals on that, this advanced covert carry class I think would be a great option for you. But I enjoyed it. Like I said, my 3 main takeaways: concealing the gun, how I dress, how I wear things, trigger manipulation. So when you think that trigger has taken up all the slack, you still have not taken up all the slack. And then single-handed shooting, getting your elbow in. But yeah, guys, once again, great class. If you get a chance to take something from Mike or Green Ops, please go ahead and do so. He's got a bunch of experience that he kind of brings to the table and gives you some perspective on kind of where he's coming from, because there's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat, and he talks about why he does things a certain way, and it makes sense. So, but anyway, guys, yeah, I was enjoyed the class. Weather was miserable on the way back. It took me an hour, a drive that would take me an hour and a half took me over 3 hours because my truck was in four-wheel drive high the entire time going 45 miles an hour because the weather was so crappy. And then I come back down home and we have the winter apocalypse where power was out for multiple days. So I left miserable conditions to come back to more miserable conditions, but everything's good to go. Guys, thank y'all so much for watching. Go train, be safe, be smart, be skilled. We'll catch you on the next video.